let me start recording. Okay, so let's get started. All right. So hi everyone, and welcome to the Mixed Dandelions podcast. It's a podcast where we'll be talking about being mixed, military, and moving on. I'm Jennifer. Today I'm very, very excited to introduce my guest. She holds several professional certifications. She's also an accomplished speaker and the author of the book, I Move a Lot and That's Okay. And yes. So I'd like to welcome Shermaine Perry-Knights. Thank you so much for being on the Mixed Dandelions podcast. How are you doing?
Doing really well. Thank you for inviting me. I love when I get the chance to podcast.
That's awesome. I know. And I'm a newbie, so I think you're like my third recording. So
oh yay, third is the best.
Yes,
they say third the worst, no, third the best.
No. So why don't we just get started with maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and your your affiliation with the military.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I heard a new term actually recently that I think describes us well. They call us third culture kids because you're not truly a part of one culture. Mm-hmm. You are the sum total of all the cultures you've ever experienced. And I feel like that's a great way to describe the military community. I have lived and traveled all over the world, literally in my mom's stomach while we were on, just traveling. I was born there and then we went back overseas. So I have literally had a passport before I knew my name, traveled all over, and a little piece of me is everywhere that I've ever lived or visited. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was really valuable to share that with others. Now, professionally, I am a certified professional and talent development, which means all things learning, development, growing, and realizing this is how we interact with each other with leadership skills, personal skills, technical skills. But I see the value in everything going back to how we learn, how we communicate with others, and books allow us to create a sense of empathy. So while I've always been an avid reader, I said, I'm going to take my chance and write a few.
That's awesome. And yeah, I read it and I thought it was great. Like it was a little nostalgic for me. And there were some parts that we'll talk about later that I wrote the notes down and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so like, I remember that. Like, yes, I totally feel that. And it was just amazing. So where did you, where are some of the places? Well, so first, what was the branch of the military that you grew up in?
Air Force, but just thinking too. Good OPSEC, right? Our version of being sensitive with information. I made the book around the Army lifestyle. So I said, let me change the branch just a little bit. But I grew up in the Air Force. We've lived on naval bases, Air Force bases, Army bases, just by nature of, the work.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm an Air Force bred as well. So
yay.
Yes, my dad was in for 30 years. We were mostly Air Force bases. We did Scott Air Force Base, Seymour Johnson, RAF Lakenheath in England. Okay. And then we did my dad in Okinawa, he was stationed on Kadena, but there was no E9 housing. So we ended up living on Camp Foster, which was a Marine Corps base. So, but for the most part, yeah, we did. But I think I heard on another podcast or interview that you lived in England as well.
Yes. So we lived in Colchester.
Okay.
And let's see, Colchester. What was that base called? I think it was called Bentwater, something like that.
Okay.
So a while back we lived in England and Colchester, and then we went to San Diego. That's where I was born, and then went back to England to Colchester. You know how that goes. So they're like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Please don't ask me that. I don't know."
I know that where are you from question, it's always tricky because and I feel like a lot of military children, they'll like, it depends. So like they might say the last base they were from, or they might say where their parents are from or where they were born. And I think now I've kind of stuck with Okinawa, Japan, because I was born there and then my mom is from Okinawa and we lived there twice. So I think that's sort of where. But then people get confused with, oh, you're Japanese and oh, you grew up in Japan. And it's like, it's a little more complicated.
Right. So that's it, right? It's complicated because a little piece of us lives everywhere in the world. And depending on who I'm talking to and my comfort level or how much you really want to explain, because that's a factor.
Yes.
My answer changes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because everybody wants to know. They'll be like, oh, but you're not German. You went to high school in Germany?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not German. And they're like, well, oh, you lived in Turkey, but do they eat turkey in Turkey? No, they don't eat turkey in Turkey. I'd say that everywhere I go. It shocks people.
Oh,
And so
how
depending on
funny.
what the level is, I'll just say, oh, I'm just from everywhere. My family's from Trinidad and Tobago, but we're from everywhere. And I just kind of leave it there.
Hmm.
So you don't have to give too much of your life story.
I think my niece was born in Germany. My sister and my brother-in-law, they both work for APHIS, so they were stationed over there and near Frankfurt. And so she was born while they were there. And I think she gets a lot of that. Oh, so you're German? And she's like, no.
Well, let me make this full circle. I finished high school in Wiesbaden, which is maybe 30 minutes away from Frankfurt. So I know that place like the back of my hand, right? I can
Actually
see
think that's where
Frankfurt
they
in my
were
mind.
stationed. Yes,
Small
because
world.
we because like that sounds familiar because we went there as part of our honeymoon because we just like did 2 weeks in Europe, and since they were there, I was like, oh well, let's spend a few days with them, and they like drove us around and stuff, and I think that's where they were at, and they lived right off base. It was an army base, so that
Yes.
they were stationed at. So
So
oh,
you were in Mainz
see,
or Mainz-Castell. You probably
yes,
visited.
they lived
That's
in
right
mines, I
there in
think.
Wiesbaden. And you probably got on the train right downtown, which is
Yeah.
across from this really awesome McDonald's. It tastes different overseas, everybody. It tastes
Yes,
better
yes,
overseas.
yes.
So small world. Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna tell you, I'm excited. And I feel like every time I do one of these, it's like chatting with a friend you didn't know you had,
Hmm.
not necessarily something super official and all of that. I
No.
have been trying to reach out to different people within AFES because you see a lot of books in there, but you
Hmm.
don't see many books that really capture the military family
No,
experience.
no, I
And so I'm just
agree.
like, well, what do we got to do to actually put stuff in there that looks like us? Because
Hmm.
there's a lot of biracial, bicultural kids in
Yes.
there. How do we get it to actually speak to our experience? And like, who is the gatekeeper to say, hey, you want one? How do we get in
Should
there?
ask my brother-in-law because they're in the corporate offices. So I might put in a word.
Ask and be like, hey, who is the gatekeeper? Do they like snacks?
Who
Got
do
to
we
know
need to
that.
talk to?
And if I can get them some of those German Smurfs, maybe that will sell it. I don't know.
That's actually one of the things that caught my attention with your book is the family on the cover. Like I
Yes.
loved that it's an interracial family because in the military it is like it's very prevalent in the military, and military service members are more prone to be in interracial relationships like the
Hmm.
research has shown. And so and I don't think there's a lot of information on that. Like I have a master's in sociology, so I'm very interested in like qualitative research and stuff. And so I was, once in a while I'll kind of like search for that stuff, and there isn't a whole lot. And I mean, there's a little bit more coming on, but like I found one research on being mixed race and in the military as far as like military dependence. And so I love that. Yes, like I think your book is sort of like it's part of that process of bringing attention to all the different families that encompass that military lifestyle. And that's what, like I said, drew me to that book at first was like, oh, that cover, it's amazing. And it's relatable. And I think that
Yeah.
especially for kids is important that they are able to see that.
That's one thing I love. It's a true celebration of diversity. So my mom's family's from Trinidad and Tobago. My dad is from the US. And different, completely different cultures. And I loved anywhere I lived in the world, I always had friends with two or three cultures in their household, multiple races. Even our family has multiple races in it. And it was just a beautiful celebration. Like, oh, this person's family is from the Philippines. Oh, let me learn a little Tagalog. This
Mm-hmm.
person is from Korea. Let me learn a little bit of this. And you'd spend time with each other's family members, and they truly just become extensions of your own family. And
Mm-hmm.
you're learning their backgrounds, the struggles of that particular group, and celebrating them with food and language. So I said, I
Yes.
want to see that more on a cover because there's not a lot of, in my opinion, they may exist, but I have never, especially when I grew up, I never saw books that had kids with the big
No.
curly hair
Right.
or the wild hair. I have all these stages I can do with my hair. And so it's like I didn't see that enough. And I certainly didn't see people that look like my family of
Mm-hmm.
all backgrounds in the same household. It exists, but you don't see it in books. And so every time I chat with different parents, I love when I get messages from parents and they'll say, this looks just like my kid. They they think it's them. And I'll say, well, yeah, it's them. Because what kid doesn't want to look at a book
Right.
and see themselves in the cover, their eyes, their
Exactly.
hair, their,
Mm-hmm.
all the little pieces that are them, even the little cartouche that many of us wear, the
Mm-hmm.
character is wearing that. And people say, you really did your research. I was like, no, this is my real life. I just
Right.
changed a few things to have some distance from my experience. But like you said, it's important for people to see that.
Yes.
And I just want that in every bookstore, in every area where, regardless of the book, someone can look on the shelf and feel heard and seen on that cover and in that story, because that is where you win. It's not about the money, it's about the impact and how, just think how beautiful that is. The next generation of kids will all be able to look in a book and see themselves. We didn't have that. Like, we had to make it up in our heads based
Right.
off of what the story was.
Well, and I think there's value in that, right? There's
Mhm.
value. And I think, especially for the younger generation, like knowing that you are valued and you may look different than some people, but it doesn't mean that's a bad thing. Like, that's a great
Right.
positive thing to have access to more than one culture and to have, to have this diversity and this inclusion. And I think that's great. And I think it's great for even people who maybe aren't, mixed race or something, to see that and like to
Yeah.
see, oh yeah, that's totally normal. Like, things are different, people are different, families are different, and that's okay. It's all okay, right? So
It is. That's
and
so that's literally the theme of life.
yes.
It's different and that's okay. And so my mother would always tell us that as kids, is that the things that make you different make you special. I
Mhm.
can hear her say that a million times a day. And as you get older, you realize it is true, because those things
Yes.
do make you special. And at some point, other people start to appreciate that about you.
Mhm.
And they're like, wow, I didn't know this. That's so cool. Or they hear you, way your mom sounds, or the way your dad looks, and they start to ask questions in a positive way based out of curiosity. And just like that, you've shared a little piece of your world with someone.
Exactly. And yeah, I love, like, and that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, because I want a space where people can share their stories and their experiences, and then other people can learn from that and reflect. And it's just like I tell my kids a lot too, like, we don't live in that military community anymore, but I try to instill in them that, yeah, people are different. People speak different languages. They're born in different places. They might look, but that's all okay. Like, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's all okay. And our own family all look different, So and I think too, like with the military, yeah, like with the food, like I loved going to different friends' houses, and like we at least got exposed to that language and that food. And it's like, oh yeah, this house has the best kimchi, and this
Yes.
house has the best like onigiri, and this house, all of the lumpia. And
Hmm.
I was just, and yes, it was just like, oh, I miss that. I seriously miss, yes, that whole military lifestyle, and just everything that it brought. And that was one of the reasons why I started the podcast, so that I could too, like, connect with other
Connect.
people. And because I miss that, because I've been in Chicago or right outside, for the past 20 some odd years. And so yeah, I really missed it. And so that's why I was so glad that I found your book and that I got to connect with you. And yeah, so well, so why don't you what was one of your favorite things though growing up in the military, besides just like connecting? What was, like, moving around, or was it that diversity? Like, what are some of the things that you absolutely, like, as an adult now, you could like really appreciate?
Well, I have to say first, so it's two things. First, because I'm a foodie, love love those experiences, like you're saying, going to different households, trying new foods, and it becoming a part of your culture, even though it's not directly, becomes part of your culture. The second piece is these new experiences,
Mhm.
being able to hop on the train at 12 and go to Europa Park, which is in
Mhm.
Germany, like an amusement park, and just enjoy yourself, or to go skiing in Switzerland. Things that are not seen as viable options or as accessible here in the United States.
Right.
They are very much normal experiences to children living overseas. So I spent
Mhm.
most of my life overseas, and just that celebration of diversity. I really miss those things. So I said, I want to be able to bring some of that here. I have to be very much intentional living in the US to make sure that I'm bringing in people of other
Yes.
backgrounds to constantly learn and grow and immerse yourself in other cultures, because sometimes things are very much separated. And I don't believe it's intentional. At least I have to believe it's not. But I'll say,
Mhm.
well, let me go to this part of town because I love the market here. And let me try to connect with a few individuals, pre-COVID, of course, and just, connect and grow and learn. because if not, it's so easy to stay in your own little bubble. And I
It
want to make
is.
sure that my bubble is always different, that I
Mhm,
am always outside of my comfort zone. So that's what I'll probably say I love the most, is that there really wasn't a comfort zone.
mhm.
You literally had to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, because things are growing and changing and moving so fast that you just learn to trust your instincts in a way that some people never they never learn until they're a full adult. Like we had those instincts at 5, 6, 7, and 8. You could
Right.
sense danger. You can pick up another language. You could probably go to the store and buy some snacks for your friends
Mhm.
in another language, because you developed quick instincts. And I miss that.
I do too. I agree. And it's funny because like my husband, he was born and raised in Chicago. So we have like we grew up very differently. But I'm lucky that he's like willing to, try new things and to travel. And like now though, where I'm like, okay, like I really want to move. Like it's time to move. So we're just trying to figure out where now. But no, and I think too, like all of that, it helps us to be able to experience change and adapt to change a lot quicker. And then to respect that change and to be more positive with it. So yeah, I loved I think moving around and the diversity, that was one of my favorite things. I joke that I feel like my daughter, she is similar, like she likes learning a few words and phrases in a bunch of different languages. So I'm like, well, if we ever go vacation in Europe, you're our translator, at least to help order things. Because
Right.
she's like learned a few words in German and Norwegian and Dutch and Italian. And I was like, there you go. Like you're our translator.
Well,
And
she's
I
my
love,
kind of girl. At
right?
least
She
she
loves to travel.
like they have all these apps now where you can do a
Mhm,
quick translation. Like I had a
mhm.
pocket diary in Turkish.
Yes.
Process that. Like that's what we did, guys. And you had to learn enough to trust
Mhm.
your instincts and make a few friends of that culture that was their dominant language. You guys could hang out
Yes.
and then bring your pocket diary in case you ran into something. So you had to learn how to order food, how to ask for help, how to ask about transportation and the time
Mhm.
and basic things. But now it's the world is a lot easier to move around than it was
It
then. So
is.
a little bit of the mystery is taken out of the experience.
Well, I remember too, living in England, we had host nation classes. And like, yeah, we would have, because British English and American English are quite different. And so like one of the things they taught in host nation class in England was language and like learning what those different words were.
I remember Host Nation. Yeah, it's
Yes.
very different. Like you're saying the bathroom here in the United States, over there you're saying the loo.
Yeah.
It's very
Or
different.
like
People probably like,
chips.
who is loo? It's bathroom. You're saying French fries, we call them chips.
Yes,
You're
and we
calling it
just
chips in the US,
smother
they're
it with
calling it
vinegar.
crisp. It's different.
Yep. It's like if you ask for that, you're gonna get something completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah, I loved all of that. So did you find that though you had any like certain struggles, or was there anything that you found to be most difficult in that upbringing?
Um, that rapid change is all I've ever known. And because I was
Hmm.
born into it, it became normal, if
Hmm.
you will, because that's my experience. It would be weird to me to live in the same place my entire life because
Yeah.
I don't know what that feels like.
Hmm.
Um, what would I say that that would probably be the most difficult part? I would say not having books like this because they didn't exist for us.
Right.
And I just sat around during the pandemic, which really felt like when you first PCS, how you just somewhere, you don't have any friends, can't go anywhere, don't have a car yet.
Right.
That's what the pandemic felt like just moving in the first 3 months, you're just frustrated because you don't know, but it didn't really feel that hard. What I would say is just not having books like that as a kid that truly validated our experiences. Was it difficult? Just as is, yes, but we didn't have the resources then that we do now. I'm fortunate that I have 3 siblings, so we are our own party. Our own spades game, our own Monopoly game. So you're not as lonely with 4 of us. But I imagine that many others, it was very difficult for them, especially without defined resources. So this generation probably has a lot easier in some respects related to moving than we did a generation ago.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm one of five. So we had like my brother
Party.
taught, yes. I mean, it was good and bad, but like, yeah, I remember we would be sitting in, the billeting and my brother was teaching us how to play poker with pennies. And
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We played with pennies.
yeah, so or beans or something. And then when our last duty station, my dad's last duty station, was just me and my little sister, but we're all 3 years apart. And so, but her and I, yeah, like once we got into billeting, we just started wandering together, and we would just walk around together, and we went to the BX and the movie theater and the shopette, and it was just us two. So we had each other to to keep company and to figure things out while we were getting acclimated to the new area. So it's, yeah, having siblings, I think, definitely helps. I can imagine if it was just like me and my parents and how I would do. Because I remember too, in the 80s, when we'd move to a new place to meet friends, like we would literally just go house to house and knock on the door and be like, hey, we just moved here. Do you have kids our age? Like, I can't imagine kids doing that now.
Yeah, we would do that and be like, or you'd see somebody moving in with boxes and you're like, oh, okay, there's a new person.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over there and say hi. And then everybody comes outside, right? Because you only knew where people were if you saw a bunch of bikes in the yard.
Yeah.
Like, okay, everybody's over there, or there's a bunch of balls down. Like, okay, I'm gonna go over there. You introduce yourself and you get to start over.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times where you would have had a negative experience and just had to live with that if you grew up and lived in the same place your entire life, you get to start over constantly. So you kind of reinvent yourself to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay, well, so this time I'm gonna cut my hair, I can wear it different. And so you get to be in some new version, hopefully a better version of yourself in every new duty station, because you get to meet more people.
Mm-hmm. I loved it. I loved moving around. Like, just
Me too.
I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. So some of the moments from the book that caught my eye, I guess let's go through. So one of the lines you put, soldier like me, the little girl said, soldiers like me, the Army needs me to be tough and to learn new things quickly when we PCS. And I think that stuck with me because, yes, I think military dependents are like soldiers in the Army. We too, like when I was growing up, I didn't always feel very validated, and my struggles didn't seem to really be valued or looked on. It was always the service member and what they were going through, and we had to be strong for our parent who was serving. So when I saw that, I was just like, oh my gosh, if I was a little kid reading this book, and like, I wish I had that.
Me too. Because it was only about the service member at the time. But I have to say, the armed forces have done a better job in now
Yes.
painting the entire family as someone who serves, because it was seen like, oh, you're just there. But now there's so much recognition and experience and resources for children and their experience that you and I didn't have.
Right. I know. I was like, when I read it, I almost wanted to cry because I was just like, oh my God. And there's more research coming out on the military family. There's just a lot more attention put on to their struggles, the military spouse and the military dependent. So when I read that, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then another thing, when she said, every time we go on a new adventure, something of mine gets lost or broken. Yes.
Every single time, right? And it was probably both.
I was like, where did this? I know I have more pictures than this. Where is this thing? I was just like, oh my gosh, girl, that is so true.
Isn't it? So let me tell you, so I'm also in a few military kid Facebook groups. And what I like about it is it's people of all backgrounds, all ages. And someone posted about a box that they found in their storage that has nothing to do with them. And so they posted, and I was like, oh my God, this is a Hallmark movie waiting to happen. So they posted about this and was like, can somebody tag? It did have in there the person's first and last name. So other people started tagging, again, Hallmark movie, and found this person from their maiden name and reached out and was like, hey, again, just the power of social media, and found, I was like, hey, I think I have your box. Did you finish school in 01? And I was just like, okay, now I'm invested. I've got to follow this post and see what's going on.
I'm going to have
because
to look
just
that
like
up.
that, all of our experiences that weren't as supported, now there's the social mediums, there's a lot of research, I think, based off of what happened or didn't happen for our generation. Some good has come out of it for additional support with psychology and sociology.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's
I'm going to
crazy.
invite you to the group because we both have to see this through because now there's so much recognition for military children and their struggles
Mhm,
and their trajectory that was
mhm.
not there before. When I see this, I'm just like, oh, we're not just brats anymore. Now we are seen as an extension of the service member with a valued experience.
Yeah,
What? I was like,
and I
good
love
job,
that. I love it.
military. You're
Hmm.
2 generations late, a couple,
Yeah.
but good job.
Better late than never, though.
Right? Just a little bit.
But I love it. And it does, yeah, I think that, yeah, with all this new research, it's slowly but surely there's more information and more research and more emphasis put on it. So more value. Another, so this part of your book, so Cody the Purple Dinosaur. Um, I feel silly. So I'm reading it and I get to that part where they land in Italy, I guess. And she's like, wait, I don't have Cody. So I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, did I skip a page? And I had to go, I'm like flipping. I had to have skipped a page. You can't lose him. Like, what's going on?
Every parent, every child, every teacher and counselor that has reached out to me goes, "Oh my gosh, what happened to Cody?" It is a huge mystery for everyone. It was a group I read to last week was asking Miss Perry-Knights, can we the second grade, can I post and ask people if they know what happened to Cody? I said, you sure can with your parents' permission, to throw that in there. But so that is the next book that I'm writing to follow
Oh,
Cody's adventure back to them because everyone asked. I even created some little backpack Codys I have to show you. So you can keep him on your backpack and take him home with you because everyone wonders what in the world happened to Cody? Where is he? Is he safe? Did he learn Italian? I get some incredible questions around
where's
Cody.
Cody? I know. I was literally like, this can't be right. Like, I'm
And it
like
happens
flipping
for
through the
kids, right?
scene.
You have
It
one item that
does.
you actually got to take
Yes.
with you while you're PCSing because everything else is packed. And the panic that ensues when you're like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I lost the one thing they said that I could bring with me.
Familiarity. Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do? Because for children, it's an extension of them. It's, you know, it's it's a comfort, and the type of anxiety that
Yeah.
ensues when you lose something for a child, that's their world. It's not just a toy
Yes.
or an item. And I just, every kid, oh my gosh, I have to tell you the just the amount of little letters, is Cody okay? I was like, okay, we've got to settle this in writing. So he will be coming out
Oh,
probably in the
good.
summer. We've got to trace
Good.
him, get him to Italy, and get him back in the arms of our main character. So if you're
Yes,
listening,
I was
don't
just
worry.
like, oh, my heart is broken now.
It
Well, because
hurt when I wrote it. It hurt.
she can't possibly be doing this.
I mean, it is the heartbreak of every child. And I'm just like,
Like,
they're
I
like, what
get that it's
happened to
real,
him?
but yeah, I know. And it's that familiarity, though. Like, it's that
Mhm.
one constant that, kids will have with their lovey, and yes. And so then to lose that, it's heartbreaking. And I was just
It
like,
is.
no, I'm going to have to ask her about
I
that.
did not realize it would break so many little hearts. So I said, okay,
Abrupt,
Shermaine.
too.
And it's abrupt because that's what happens, right? You sleep, you wake up, boom, something has happened. And it's like,
Yes.
okay, how do you make sure that you bring him back in? So I will be bringing him back
Good,
in a
good.
positive way and then allowing every child to take home a little Cody like that one so they can keep him on the book bag
uh,
and keep him safe because
oh.
that's what's important for them.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that then. Let's see, two other things. So, oh, there was one part where she stepped off the plane or they were driving or something, and it was that smell. Like she was talking about the smell of Italy and how it smelled like sulfur or something. And I was like, that is so true. Like, I guess
It
I never
is.
thought about it much until I read that part. And I remember, yeah, like when we moved to Okinawa that second time, as soon as we stepped off the plane, like as soon as those doors open and it's just that humidity hit us, and then the smell of the ocean, or even like going through Naha City and like the smells that come, and then even England. It's like when like I
Yeah.
said, my husband and I, we went to England as part of our honeymoon, like stepping, and I was just like, all these smells. And even now, like as an adult, when I go places and I smell something, the smell triggers that kind of a sense, and it triggers my brain and my memories to something from childhood. And I was like, wow, I never, yeah, like that's so true. Like places have those different smells that are important, I guess, and that you remember.
That's so true. The smells are memories and it becomes
Hmm.
parts of us, right? Someone recently brought me, well, you had lived in England for a while, so you may know Smarties, the little
The
candies.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, like the
Not
hard
the American
candy.
candies, the British Smarties. It's like a
I don't know.
chocolate covered. Oh, next level. So, and they brought me something. I was like, oh my, you get excited because
Hmm.
the visual aspect of it takes you back to where you were.
Yes.
I'm thinking of Upper Hayford. I'm thinking of the area where I lived and the school I went to, and I can see myself on my peak skateboard, in my mind. And then I taste it, and it's a whole experience for the smell, the taste, the look of it. And
Hmm.
and I just imagine it's the same way for all kids and adults.
Hmm.
This is how we go back in our mind when things are difficult. At least for me, I take myself back in my mind to some of the happiest moments and I just relive it. So,
Yes.
certain candy, certain smells, looks, feels, whatever. The smell of the ocean reminds me living in Mare in Italy, which is a small part of Naples, and I remember being out there and walking and enjoying it, and it takes you back to your happier places. And so I imagine it's the same for you. Even that terrible smell of sulfur that I don't
Hmm.
like, I still love Italy, but I don't like the smell of sulfur because we live near the volcano.
Mm.
But it reminds me and it takes me back, and I have to smile at some of the great memories and then kind of, deep
Yeah.
breathe deep over the difficult
Hmm.
moments.
No, I agree. For England, it's that when I smell like a fried donut, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fried sugar donuts, for some
Just a
reason
little
that always
sugar on it.
brings
Yeah.
me back, because I remember when we lived there, and we would go to like the carnivals or something, or like
Mm,
certain parks, and they would be frying donuts there and selling, and we would get those. That's a big thing for me for England. Or even at Scott Air Force Base, there was the flight line there. So like that smell of like the jets and the sound
yeah.
of it, even still, like it's very nostalgic for me. And when my parents live down near there now, and so my dad took us on Scott Air Force Base, just driving around to see, and it's so different. Like my sister and I were like, oh yeah, we remember this. And I told my
Hmm.
kids, I'm like, oh yeah, we would have to walk from here. My friend lived on this side of the flight line. And then we're driving. I was like, still walking home. And they're like, you walk this much? I was like, all
In the
around the
snow
block.
barefoot.
Yep, I know. I was like, still walking to visit my friend. And then it was all new houses. And so my sister and I were like,
Wow.
it was very like, yes, and it's just like all those, the reminiscing and the nostalgia.
Hmm.
And then in Okinawa, there's just, yes, the smell of the sea, the ocean, and
Yeah.
certain foods, or even like it was like a seaweedy kind of like, it's not a
Yes.
good smell necessarily, but it's one that just makes me happy. Like when I do smell something like that, it brings joy to my heart, and it's like a happy place for me. So yeah, like that was a part of the book that I loved. And then
I love
finally,
that.
yes,
Love that.
like
So even like little things that remind you
yes.
of memories that you forgot.
Hmm.
Because you weren't thinking of how long you had to walk. Not over the years, you're not thinking of it, but when you're in the
Right.
moment again, you can see yourself walking down that street. You're
Feel it.
passing by and you're waving to your friend's mom. You're seeing these things in the moment
Hmm.
that are memories from years ago, that they're memories, but they're stored in the back of your mind. You kind of push them
Yes.
away as we collect new. And so I
Hmm.
love revisiting those moments, even the bad stuff
Yes.
where the dog chasing you, jumped on the car,
Oh
all
my
of those
gosh.
things where you can, because I
That
think that
was an
happened to
England
everybody, right?
experience. Yes.
That happened to me there. It happened to me in Georgia before. And I'm just like, in your mind, it was so much bigger than it was. And then when you connect with those friends again from that time period,
Hmm.
they even remind you of things that you forgot. But
Yes.
it's such a great memory to go back and relive it, even if it's through a
Hmm.
friend's perspective.
Yes. And it's nice too, because yeah, we did live this unique lifestyle. And so a lot of us moved into areas where we're not surrounded with people who have that in common. Like me right now, my like I said, my husband was born and raised here. And so it's like people who have grown up together, and I don't have that. Like there's not a lot of people here that I can reminisce with or connect with. And I think that's one thing with social media, like we were able to reconnect with people who have that in common, and so we can like get that back again a little bit. So but I love it.
Yes.
And then one final thing, and that's okay. Like I think, like I said, that is probably it's just such a great I guess, premise for the book. Like, yes, some things are not okay, but in the end, it's okay and it's gonna be okay. And I think for little kids reading this, or even like parents, like, struggling to help their kids, like just knowing, yes, it's difficult, but it's okay. It's gonna be okay. And I loved that. Like, it's
That was,
just overall, it's such a great book.
thank you. That was
And
one of my favorite moments, just that thinking of that social and emotional aspect, saying, okay, self-awareness and
mhm,
social awareness. What does someone need to know? You want them to validate all the experiences, have highs and lows in a story, but ultimately to say, you know what? It will be okay. Even if you have to fight your way through it, cry your way through it. They have like a reel that's like, are you going to boss up or are you going to cry? And it's like, first of all, I'm going to do both. That's kind of how I
mhm.
feel about most of them. Like, I'm
Right.
going to do both, but it will be okay. I will
Yes,
learn from this. I will grow from this. And so I
exactly.
wanted children to have a little mantra to say, like, I move a lot and it's okay. Because you
Mhm.
never know when people are going to, where you from? Where you from? And you're like, I just move around. Like there was a year we were in 3 different places, 2 different countries. I mean, we moved a lot just because
Yes.
of the nature of his work with like the different NATO bases and things. And there were some friends that never moved. And I was like,
Right.
how's your dad in the Air Force and he like never goes anywhere? Like how are
Right.
you how? And then you're writing letters to people. So I love this aspect of finding a book that allows parents and children to have conversations, important conversations around friendship, around their emotional status,
Mhm.
what's happening with them on the inside, around moving, around changing schools and new jobs and new homes, because there's so many pieces of it. But I just kind of sum it up to say that if you allow them to experience it the way you are, like where the mom says, I'm scared too on the plane.
Mhm.
I'm scared. Having moments like that really help your kids understand you're a human, not a
Yes.
superhero like they may view you as, and
Mhm.
say, keep those raw feelings open and just chat with them. It makes the experience even richer. Let them help
Yes.
with food and go out and pretend to look for the house even though you already chose it. Those moments really help them to feel as though they're a part of the process instead of it happening to them.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it happened to us. And you're just like, oh,
Yes.
and you're walking down the street, you don't remember which one is your house because in your mind you're thinking of the other house and you don't know this
Oh,
phone number
yeah.
yet because you haven't memorized it because the last one was like 12 digits, this kind of stuff.
Country code, county code. Yes.
Right. Country, county. Wait a minute. There's 6 more digits. What was that number again? Ugh, you know.
Yes. That's awesome. And then I just thought I had thought about something else in the book that I had I can't remember what it
Was
is
it
now
changing the
though.
money?
No, but that was another thing. Oh, writing, like writing the teachers. So I remember,
Yes.
yes, in third grade, I wrote my teacher, Miss Robinson, and because we were only in North Carolina for 2 years, and so I remember for a few years I wrote, snail mail letters. It wasn't emails or anything, and it's funny because now with my kids, they've been in the same school, from kindergarten. My oldest is seventh grade now, so it's been the same school, and
Wow.
I'm like, oh, well, maybe you can email with your teacher. And it's just funny because my husband's like, why would the teacher email their students? And
Oh, see,
I was like, they do.
they do that. Tell them they do that.
That's weird. And I was like, see, that's just, I think, the difference in our upbringing. And I was like, teachers in the Department of Defense school, I mean, I think it's Dodea now, but like when I was growing up, it was Dodds, and the Dodds schools, I think they understood that. And so, yeah, like teachers were and honestly, though, my kids' teachers are very, like, they love talking to their students, and my daughter will
Okay.
email with some of her students. But no, and I've told a few other people, I'm like, oh, yeah, I used to like write letters to my teacher. And they're like, really?
Huh.
I was like, yes, because they go through, like, teachers in Dodds schools are like the kids are just going in and out, like they see so many different faces. And so, yeah, I think once in a while, like, you find that teacher that you want to keep in touch with, or teachers find certain students that they love keeping in touch with, and just like seeing how they're growing throughout the years. And so I was just like, see, I'm not weird.
No, you're just different. And I did that as well. I know many people that do that. And so now as we're adults, I'm still like, Miss Kluver, can I call you? Can I call you by your first name? She was
uh,
like, it's still Frau Kluver. I'm like, okay, it's still Frau Kluver, fine. Which is Miss in German, Frau. And so what I tell people is that was a real part of the
mhm.
story. But I don't think I've shared this before. Mr. Mossberg was actually my second grade teacher in Turkey. And I wanted to incorporate him because he was one of my favorite teachers.
Oh.
And even though I took the story from Georgia, he was one of my favorite teachers that always stood out to me. I would, you'd write a letter, he would read it to your class. They would write their own letters, that he would package them, they'd send them back. Each teacher, as you know,
I
that's your
love
experience,
that.
they'd send it to you, or they would write one class letter to you. So you were always a part of their class until you stopped writing. And so I wanted to include him. Found out years later, Mark Mossberg is his name. He actually became like one of the regional big title holders within Dodds here in the
Oh, wow.
US.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, oh, Mr. Mossberg, I wonder if he remembers me, because of course he may not remember me, but he's probably going to say that he remembers me because I'm, you're one of their kids. You're always one of their kids. And so I did reach out, and he responded to me an email. And I was like, oh my gosh, my teacher emailed me. My husband's like, what? I'm like,
I don't understand.
See,
but I love that. Yes. And like, we can like share that.
I got to find him again so I can send him a copy of the book and be like, hey, the character loosely looks like him with the long hair. He was just super cool. And one of the few male teachers I had, which I loved, just really nice and caring. So that's something most people don't see. But in Dodds here in the US, or Dodia in Europe, the teachers are very much like an extension of your family. Just kind, caring. They're also paid appropriately, respected at work, not expected to do things after hours. So I think that plays a part in it. But they're just like an extension of your family. And when something goes wrong, like they work with the parents to make sure it's right, or with the service members' boss to make sure it's right, depending on the situation. So there is no tension a lot of times with teachers and parents. It is truly a partnership. And I would love to see more of that here in the US.
Yeah, and I think that's it's funny how you said the service member's boss. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize that, yes, like as a child in the military, what you do is an extension of what your parent who's in the service, and that gets back to their boss. Like there's a whole chain that it's not just you getting into trouble, like it's everyone's gonna know. And that's it's going to affect.
People don't realize that. So there is a defined level of parent accountability for students in the school system there. It's very different. So Shermaine, I'm doing what I need to do every day in class. Your parents are meeting with teachers, and it's truly a collaborative effort. Yes. I'm sure there's some instances where it's not, but for the most part it is. And if I am not doing what I'm supposed to do, of course they reach out to the service member. Or the maybe the spouse who, the other person. Find out second time they're reaching out to the service member. Service member, at least the time which I was in school, is coming to sit in your classes in their uniform all day long, which is quite uncomfortable for them. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Like I'm really in trouble because they don't want to sit in school all day with me. But that was their assignment today. Instead of going to the office, they sat in your classroom all day and looking at you like, why can't you just do this? Like you have one job, right?
Yep.
The third time, that was that service member in front of their boss explaining why you can't do what you're supposed to do in school. Do you see the level of accountability? And that at that point probably moves them to a level of discipline at their job, which affects their pay and their promotion status at work. If I'm using loose terms for non-military to relate to.
Right.
Can you imagine your parents losing pay and position based off of your inability to communicate effectively at school or to participate and do what you're supposed to do? Changes the game altogether. Like you only got 3 strikes. After that, you're no longer a part of that school system. They will send you to, or however it works, you go back to a different area where you're not a part of that school system because it is a privilege. And there's such rich opportunities that you will either behave or the service member will have some type of interaction with their job that's negative. And they're probably going to send you to live with somebody else in the family. So that creates another dynamic.
Yeah, my parents, I remember they used to, for us, they would threaten us with all-girl Catholic school in Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so they didn't threaten to send you back to the country where they grew up. It's like, we'll take you back to Trinidad. I'm like, Mommy, but it's beautiful there. She was like, it's not the same.
They did threaten to leave me in Japan once.
Okay, see, look, I swear our parents grew up together. Like, that is it, right?
I was like, But and it's funny because I'll tell my kids, I'm like, if you guys act up, if I hear from your teacher, we're gonna sit in your classroom. And they're like, no, you're not. I was like, oh, you don't think we're gonna be sitting right next to you in your classroom?
In the tiny chair,
Staring at you?
as they're like
Yes.
really big. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. You're like, why is this 300
We'll
pound
do
man
it.
sitting in this little tiny chair?
And I was like, don't call our bluff because we will do it.
And everybody's looking at them like, ooh, so and so's dad is here today.
Yeah.
And you're like trying to, everybody's on their best behavior because there's clearly someone that's too big to fit in this desk, sitting in this desk, and they're already upset.
Just for one day, that class will be well behaved.
One day, right? Subs didn't have any problem substitutes.
I know. Okay, so I mean, we're getting close to the end, but so you said you were going to be writing a book about Cody and where is Cody?
Yes.
So do you have any other plans with this book? Like, are you going to write more books? Are you going to make it a series? Like, because there's so much that you can, like incorporate and do with this. It's a great starting point. So what are some of your future plans with it?
So there's so many ideas, and I'm pulling them all from my experiences moving. Like the time we moved to Turkey, we'll talk about that, or the time I moved to Germany from Italy. And just it's a very different culture, but it was really cool. Time we moved to England, and like you said, the different words between English in the US versus English in England, very different. And just showing more of the diversity, the rapid change. I want to have, and I have them all written on sticky notes, but you got to pull it together. Talking about things that we actually went through when a friend of yours lost their parents.
Yeah.
And it was sad, but it was relatable because that was so and so's mom. And we're all family, even though we're not family. And how you felt for them and how you hurt for them and you cried with them and you loved them. And this is like another sibling to you, even though it's not. Talking about that, talking about mental health. When he deployed and when he came back, he was like really mean and different, that we all just dealt with. But there wasn't a term for it. Now they have something called the cycle of deployment, based off of probably all the problems that came out of our group. But talking about that, talking about PTSD, I want to talk about all the real things and raw emotions that we experience that you were just told to just figure it out. And and we are just a resilient group, not because we want to be, because we have to. And I want to talk around those different areas because I feel like it's very much needed, and the children nowadays can feel supported in knowing that, oh yeah, they lost their parent, or that person came back very different, right? And nobody understands why. He lost his smile, but that's okay. So I'm going to keep it, and that's okay, as a part of the title to tie all the themes together. Having a blended family at some point, because a lot of military families divorce. That is a natural thing in the military community. Talking around that is just, there's so many ways in which I'd like to advance the stories and introduce new characters. Of course, always bicultural or biracial, because that is a reality, and I don't see much of that.
Right. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think the deployments, yes, like my dad, he would only, like, he would be gone for maybe 1 to 3 weeks at a time. I don't remember him doing like super duper long deployments, but he would go, like, as he got into that senior master sergeant, chief master sergeant ranks, like he would be gone more often. And I remember, like, my mother would essentially be a single mom to 5 kids.
Yes.
And it was difficult for her. And then my dad would come back, and like, you change that dynamic now of your family, and that was hard. But then he'd go again, and then you'd sort of get back into the routine of what you do when they're gone, and then they come back. And like, and then too, I think for him it was difficult because, like, he's expecting things to be a certain way, but then we've all gotten so used to it being a different way. And so and I remember I used to feel a little guilty because I would be like, sometimes it was easier when he was on deployment. So then, or TDY. Yeah, we called it TDY.
Yes, TDY.
But, like, what, I'm like, when is he going to go again so that we can get back, and I would feel guilty about that sometimes. But then as I got older, I started realizing, okay, well, I'm sure it was difficult for him as well, because now he's having to come back and like reacclimate into everything. So I think all of that is just, I think, yes, the mental health aspect of it, all of that is just, that's all amazing. And I can't wait to see where all of that takes you, and all of that, in the books. And so then I guess, what advice would you give to any military child having a hard time? Like right now, what would you say to them?
I would probably say 2 things to them. First, And I know it sounds cliche. I would let them know that there are many of us who had the exact same experiences that truly understand what it feels like. Like mine was gone 9 to 10 months of every year. I don't know if it was a choice to TDY as much,
Right.
but it became very normal for him not to be in the household because 10 months is a lot of time in the
It
year.
is.
And you're wondering, well, mom's really the boss, but you're kind of listening, like, who do you really listen to? Kids go through that, like, okay, well, you're looking over at her, like, and she's like, do it. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
This whole power struggle. So I want kids to just understand that there are many of us, while they may be younger than us, the experiences, the feelings are still there. Like you said, it was nostalgia
Mhm.
for you, but you can go right back in that moment and you remember
Mhm.
how it felt every single time they left. And you'd miss them and then they'd come back and you're like, why are they so crazy? Like, what is going on with them? Right? You didn't understand. So to say that they can lean on us because we are here and we truly understand. The other pieces I would tell them to write, even if they have no intention of ever publishing the story. Journaling is powerful, it is therapeutic. It allows us to free ourselves in a way that we may not always feel empowered to talk to someone. So
Mhm.
write it, even if you ball it up and throw it away later.
That's great.
If I have a lot on
Yes.
my mind, I'll write it down. Sometimes you get the angry scribbling, sometimes you get real scribbling, and then just ball it up and I throw it away sometimes. Sometimes I keep it, sometimes I throw it away, but then my mind is free of the
Mhm.
thought that was weighing me. So write these things down. Someday they may want a collection of stories to share with someone else to truly understand their experience. Because when you say you're lonely, it's a different type of lonely that
Mhm.
everyone doesn't understand. You don't know, do they actually love me? They're gone so much. And you're asking like, oh, of course I love you, this kind of thing. And you're just like, well, I don't really feel that, but okay. All of these emotions that they have, we truly get it. So when I talk to the younger ones, and it was a review that made me cry almost. And I'm not a crying person. That's another thing. I don't know if we cry much, if that's normal. Like
Didn't. I do now
nothing
after
really bothers us, right? We're
yeah.
desensitized to a lot of things, which I don't know if that's normal. But there was one where a parent said they had just moved again and he's 7. So he's starting to realize he's missing his friends. She said it made him feel heard and seen. And it kind of touched my heart in a way and the tears came. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She said, he was like, she's like me. And he was looking at the character. And he said, I want to take this to my class so they can learn about me. And I was just like,
Oh,
wow, that was the mom sharing that. And I said, well, I'm not crying, you're crying, right? So I'm on the phone. I don't know this person, but people reach out to you. And that's what
I
I
want to
want them
cry.
to understand is that the whole purpose of writing these things down is so that someday when you're ready, you can share it with other people and they'll have a little more empathy for your experience. Like you said, stop asking where are you from and just say, hey, what feels like home to you? Where feels
Mhm.
like home? That type of, it's a small change, but having that level of empathy is really important. So I'm kind of on a mission to get this book within every public library. And the reason I say public libraries is that I want to reduce the limitations with access for those who can't pay for something. But if
Right.
it's in the library, you can always check it out so
Mhm.
that teachers and local school officials or whoever can find this and share the story with others who need a little more empathy in their classroom because this kid is just everybody's saying, oh, he's such a problem, she's such a problem. And it's not that. They have other things going on that they just don't know how to share. But a book like this could help them open up a little bit to have a deeper conversation to empower them. So I would say write it. Please write it down, even if you never share with your parents. Just write it down.
It's great because too, I think this book, I mean, I think it could relate to anybody, right? That moves around a lot, not just
Yeah.
military dependents. So that's awesome. Well, how can people connect with you and learn more about you and
Oh,
get the book?
well, first, you can always reach out to me online. Let me tell you, I love meeting new people. I think that's kind of the military getting us too.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, new friends. It's just like, you made a new friend. I'm like, I made a new friend.
Yep.
So I would say you can reach out to me. The easiest way possible is on my website, booksformilitaryfamilies.com.
Okay.
And it has all my socials on there. Like it's really easy to connect. I'd love to talk to your kid's school, to do a reading, all of that. But you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram and all those kind of places at Amazing LY Shermaine. So amazingly Shermaine. You'll find me on there and I am more than happy to connect. Like it just really warms my heart to know that a book could make someone feel better, could make them want to connect with someone else, could offer a little relief to someone who's stressed. Like, I lived for the library. So it's always good for me to know that there's an impact, not a sale, but there's an impact and there's a deeper conversation that was achieved because of this. So please reach out, even if you say it stinks, I don't like it. I'm all right with that. Like, it's it's a
A learning
conversation.
process,
Like,
right?
tell me what you would write, what you would do differently, so
Yep.
we can talk about that next.
Yeah. No, and yeah, because the book too, I mean, it doesn't just relate to kids. Like I said, like there were so many parts of that, like as an adult, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I remember that. And it just, yeah, like it validated my childhood, I think. And so I think the books, even though they are, I guess, technically written for children, or at least that's your target audience, like it's something that's relatable to everybody, even a parent, like trying to help their child, deal
Yeah.
with things. So I think, yeah, so I love it. I'm so glad I found it. And
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad I connected with you.
I'm
And
all excited because it's like a
yes, I love
conversation
it.
tool, right? Because like
Yes.
imagine you change jobs because you got a new opportunity.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, you want to change jobs, but you got to prepare the rest of your family for your move. It's not like when we used to just get orders, boom, you're moving. It's like, okay, we're moving now. So, but there's opportunities for conversations. And so, like you said, it's it's almost like the story is written by a kid for a kid because we're all like a little bit of that kid inside of us still.
Yes.
And so if a parent is willing, they can have a conversation with them and prepare them mentally and
Mhm.
emotionally before you just kind of rip apart their whole lives for a new place. Yeah, they're going to love it in 6, 9 months after they get there. But there's a whole lot that happens in between the time that you say, we're moving until,
Yes.
hey, I love this new duty station. Yeah, it's like 6 months of, do you really want them to be miserable for 6 months? Or can you talk with them, empower them, and find ways to just really help them feel, and that's okay aspect?
Hmm. Yeah, it's okay to be sad,
Yeah.
and then we got to move on. We just
Yeah.
we deal with all of that, and that's okay. And then, yeah, I love it. I mean, I can't say much enough
But it's so
about how
cool
much it is.
though.
It's just, it's great. And yeah, I love the that's okay aspect of it because it is and it will be. So, but
Yeah.
thank you again. Is there anything else you'd like to share or?
No, I feel like I'm chatting with a friend. I'm like,
I
oh,
know,
Jennifer's
me
my new
too.
friend. I'll be talking about this later. I'll be like,
You
I met a
are
new
my new
friend
friend.
today. Because I mean, it's so cool that because we literally are changing environments quite a bit, you can connect over something small that we share.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's the same way for kids if they're moving to a new country and they're not military. You're living a transient life for immigrant kids, and you find someone that has one thing that's similar. Like I love tamarind. Somebody else loves tamarind. And we're like, yes, now we're friends. We get together, we eat tamarind, which is a fruit. And it's like, okay, something very simple that you can connect with. So, like, why not build connections with others instead of finding ways to be divided? So, let's continue to just
I
really
love it.
connect and grow with other people.
I agree completely. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I love meeting you.
Me
So
too.
thank you. Thank you for writing this book.
Thank you. Just a
And
little
I,
piece of me. And, the pandemic just released some creativity.
yes.
So, I'm glad that it was impactful in the right way.
So thank you. But yeah, thanks again.